Visiting Wilkes County on business or pleasure? Stay in Wilkesboro at the Holiday Inn Express, Hampton Inn, or Red Roof Inn and Suites. Enjoy Southern hospitality, cozy rooms, and a complimentary breakfast. Explore the mountains and then relax with us. You've earned it. Closed captions for this episode of Life in Wilkes is brought to you by Deal Insurance Agency in Wilkesboro, an award-winning, experienced, family-owned and operated agency with service and coverage that goes above and beyond expectations. Join us on a captivating journey as we explore the charm, history, and vibrant culture of Wilkes County. Discover the hidden gems, inspiring stories, and remarkable people that make Wilkes a place worth knowing and celebrating. Join us now and experience the unique essence of Life in Wilkes.
Good morning, Mick. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
Well, I know a bit about who you are, but let's get kicked off by you telling people who you are and what you do.
Okay. So my name is Mick Zulpo. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm not local to Wilkes County. Grew up, born and raised in Queensland, Australia. And during my growing up, it's almost an Australian tradition to go traveling the world, to see the world as you grow up. I guess most Australians feel like we're somewhat remote in our country down there on an island in the Pacific.
Somewhat.
Right. So it's almost an Australian rite of passage to go and travel the world. So I spent a first year after graduating high school doing that, backpacking around the world. And during that journey, spent some time here in North Carolina working with kids in a 4-H camp in Reidsville, North Carolina.
Wow,
I didn't know where that was when I first started.
That seems random to me. How did that happen?
So there was a placement program in Australia that they would give you a summer work visa and you could come over here and explore the country and do things like that. And they actually placed me there in that program. So ended up spending the summer there where I met a girl named Ainsley, and she was a freshman at App State. She was the swimming instructor there. And, we hung out for the summer, but we were kids from other sides of the world and very young, 18, 19 years old. So fast forward 12 years, we stayed friends and went off and did our own things, university and what have you.
Were you keeping up with each
We were
other?
keeping in touch. I came to visit a couple of times. She came down to visit me. And then 12 years later, through kismet or what have you, we got together and shortly after got married.
Okay, so who went where?
I came over here, so
Okay.
I came to visit her and then went back and broke the news to my parents that I'd be moving halfway around the world permanently.
Right.
And so we got married, and we ended up here we actually started in Charleston, South Carolina. That's Ainsley had a job. I just finished a master's degree. So she had a career happening, so we thought we'll start here in the States. So we were in Charleston for several years, did a short stint in Seattle, and then we came back to the Carolinas here because she grew up in the Raleigh area.
Oh, my goodness. So what incredible experiences. Charleston being obviously a big part of the founding of America. So to have all that history there, was that something that meant something to you from your culture?
It did, because when you think about it, and this is probably something that a lot of Australians discover when they do travel, is we come from a very young country. Australia was started as a country in 1901 through a vote of parliament, no war or anything like that, to become a country. So when you're in Australia, things are relatively new per se. So when you come to somewhere like Charleston and you experience the market downtown and the cobblestone streets and things, that is very foreign to Australians. We just don't have that in our culture. So to come to a place like that with such a long history per se, it was quite enjoyable. You get that in Europe and other places as well, but in the United States, Charleston is one of those places that you can experience that. So it was very unique. And then the history with the Civil War and Fort Sumter and all these things. Right. It was really a great place to kind of arrive here in the States and learn about American culture per se.
That's great. So what then took you to Seattle. I'm guessing your wife's technical work?
Correct. She had a chance for a promotion, and we could go anywhere, and we both love the mountains, obviously. Now we're here in Wilkes. But we've always loved the Pacific Northwest. It's a beautiful part of the country. And I'd spent some time in Canada previous to that. So we decided to have an adventure and went out there. And we took that adventure while Ainsley was pregnant with our first child. So it was a big adventure for us, and got settled out there. And then through no fault of ours, that the company decided to make some changes and close some branches. So with that in mind, we decided to come back to the Carolinas, close to her family and things like that with a newborn.
So that put you in Raleigh.
That put us back in Fuquay Arena.
Yes, okay.
In Raleigh. And we continued our professional careers down there. And we were down there for, I think, about 13 years.
Okay. So what were you doing at that time?
So I was, for a short stint, running a brewery down there for 3 years, and then got recruited to a company across the road to dive into environmental technologies. So I spent 8 years there running the sales team, and spent a lot of time traveling internationally, teaching foreign governments and private industry, US EPA regulations specific to what's called source sampling. So stationary emission sources like a chimney or something like that in a factory, where you may be emitting pollutants to the atmosphere and you need to report that to a governing body.
Interesting.
Yep. And then that company made the equipment to allow private industry or companies or even government, if they needed to take samples and monitor that emission source.
That's interesting. So it sounds like that piece of your background, it must have increased your mindfulness and just awareness of how things operate and work as far as engineering, building, and industry, right?
Correct. So we had the engineering piece, obviously, that because we were building the equipment, and then it also gave me a perspective on foreign business. I've had a lot of experience in that, and that was my field of study when I was doing my MBA, was foreign business and how those things work. So it was great to travel the world and really get an understanding of cultural differences and surprisingly cultural similarities. You know how similar we are. We're not always that different. So
would you say that that's across the board? Because I think that's a question that a lot of people have, where they feel because people sound different, look different, they must be incredibly different. I've interviewed a lot of people. I haven't found that to be the case at all. They sound different, but the things they want and need, they're similar. So you've traveled, you've lived that. What have you found?
And I 100% agree with you. I've lived in 6 countries and traveled to over 50, a lot of those multiple times. And I would have to say, at the end of the day, human beings are human beings. And it comes down to, I wouldn't necessarily say their personality, but their persona, who they are as a person. And there's good people and bad people no matter where you go. And if you associate with good people, in my experience, good people tend to be the same, regardless of cultural differences, language, what have you. I've been to the Middle East and in Muslim countries where I was treated just as well as I was in Europe and the West. There was really no difference. So, and I think taking that perspective or learning that pretty quickly allowed me to open myself up and hopefully experience or get more out of the experience of being in those countries than being closed and afraid and I can't say something I may offend or I'm not sure what to do.
Were you consciously thinking that or did it just organically happen?
I think organically. I think when I was traveling at 18, it was more about the glitz and glamour of experiencing the world, right? I wasn't that sophisticated.
At 18, it's a different experience, right?
But as I got older and continued to travel, I really started to think and notice in myself that the experiences that I were having, although unique to the country, were relatively the same in terms of spending time with people and the way that they would greet you and spend time and open their homes even and their families to me. And hopefully I was reciprocal in doing that when people would come to visit here. So I think it was something I learned over time. And I have, yes. Right. Oftentimes we'd have foreign customers come to our facility in Fuquay, and I really made a dedicated effort to make sure that I was offering them the experience that either they had or someone else similar to them had offered me when I traveled. Yeah. And I think that helps open up your perspective of the world, and I would say even more than academic learning, that's probably been something that's really made me a better person.
It's more difficult to dislike people when you get to know them, isn't it?
It really is. It really is,
You're not a bad guy. Right?
Yeah, and just be understanding, as I said, when I'm in the Middle East, I wasn't necessarily praying 5 times a day, but I was understanding that culture, and I'd go sit and have a coffee while they did, and at the same time, they respected me and knew that that wasn't my persona or my culture or whatever it may be, and there was just a common understanding that that's okay on both sides.
That's a nice sentiment to take with us everywhere. Right?
It is.
Yeah. All right. So you brought this world experience, which sounds like a very human experience.
Absolutely.
And has helped form the way that you think and do business now. Mm-hmm. So you were over near Raleigh and your home, and the world changed a bit, I understand, and that's what helped you find North Wilkesboro and Wilkes County.
Correct.
So talk about that for a moment.
So we were in a fortunate position in 2017 where we could look for a vacation home. My wife being an App State grad and knowing the Boone area specifically, because we would rent a cabin every year with friends and be up there in the fall and to enjoy the weather, we decided to start looking, and that's where we knew. So we looked in Watauga County, and we just couldn't find something we liked. Either crowded per se. We were leaving the suburbs to come and have a neighbor in the mountains, which is not what we were looking for. Or it just wasn't a fit for our family and what we were looking for. So through our search, we came across a local realtor here, Mike Martinez, and told Mike our story. And he immediately said, "Oh, you guys need to be on Buck Mountain."
Oh, sure.
And we said, "We don't know where that is."
Right.
So we came up for a weekend, and unfortunately, we were like a lot of other people. We would come up 421 on our way to Boone, come through Wilkes, but never really took the chance to stop. So we went and saw a property up there, which is on the west side of the county, and stayed the night in a hotel here in town, went back the next morning to look at the property. And by the time we'd driven the 3 hours back to Raleigh, we'd made an offer on the property. It was just a great fit.
That quick.
And that was just a simple conversation and introduction to Wilkes County and what have you. So we were weekend warriors for, let's say, 3 years, coming up after the kids finished school and getting our grocery pickup order and heading up to the cabin on weekends, on long weekends, and then heading back on Sunday evening or Monday for kids for school until, as you alluded to before, the world changed and COVID hit. My wife and I were not traveling anymore for work. The kids were out of school. So we thought, what a great opportunity to come up to the mountains and have more than a weekend, have an extended period of time up here to experience. So
that's when you made the decision to actually move?
Well, that's the decision we made to test, let's say, with no intention of moving, but let's enjoy something that we have that we may not get to do ever again. And after about 6 months of traveling back to Raleigh every 2 weeks to clean the pool and mow the lawn and get the mail, my wife and I kind of looked at each other and said, are we really thinking about going back to suburbia? Is this what we want for our family? And we had the typical concerns of anyone else moving kids out of schools, moving to a rural community, what would be offered for us and things like that. So we were fortunate enough to be in a position where we weren't pressured for time. So we made a couple of phone calls, and we actually went and visited the schools here in the county before we made our final decision.
You brought the kids as well.
We brought the kids and let them see the schools. And apart from the beautiful nature up here and the possibility of a different lifestyle, I would have to say that visiting the schools here pretty much sealed the deal for us.
Okay, so let me ask the question. Who made the first, okay, this is good? Mom and dad or your children?
I think mom and dad. The kids were still quite young at the time.
Okay.
But when we went to visit Mount Pleasant Elementary and we went to visit West Middle over there, and the faculty was so open and greeting for us.
Explain that. Tell us what you mean when you say that.
So there was just an openness and a willingness for them to come and spend the time with us. We just randomly called out of the blue and said, "Hey, we're thinking about moving here. Can we come and tour the school?" And the answer was, absolutely, we'd love to show you around, those kinds of things. Just an open greeting to us. And then when we actually got to the schools and got to meet some of the faculty, the teachers, things like that, it was just that small town welcoming feel that we got. And through no fault of any teachers in Wake County, the population growth down there has been so substantial that the school system's overwhelmed, right? So they're doing everything they can every day to help the kids and things like that. Whereas we came here, it was a slower pace. Mount Pleasant Elementary had 2 third-grade classes, each with only 12 kids in them that our son would have gone into or did go into. And those kind of opportunities are few and far between these days, and things like that. So we just felt really good about it. We felt like the opportunity for our kids would be there as well as the family, and making a lifestyle change. So we made that decision, and we were very fortunate that the housing market was in our favor at the time, so we had no problem selling the property in Fuquay Arena.
Right.
And our jobs were flexible enough that we could move here. So we made the decision to pack up and move to Wilkes County.
Wow. So you fell in love with the area before, and enough to spend the weekends.
Right.
And then the world changes a bit, and hey, maybe this would be a good place for us to live, even maybe your forever, right? Or a piece of your forever. And you get here. So now you're here full time. Both of you had the capacity from a work standpoint to be remote workers and virtually do things, right? But something happened, and you could not be content with that.
So
how'd that happen?
So moving here with a young family,
Right.
and obviously experiencing everything that quote unquote big city offers, we came here, and one of the first things we noticed was there was a lack of family entertainment for things for families to go and do. Don't get me wrong, there's great outdoor activities and things like that, and we have access to Scott Kerr Lake, and we have access to some quote-unquote skiing in Boone in the winter. It's not Colorado, but it's good enough for me to go out there and try and hurt myself.
Yeah. You can't fall as far.
Exactly.
There's a roll. It's just not as far.
You got to stop at the end. But we saw that there was a lack of opportunity for things like, hot days, bad weather, whatever, that there was something missing in the community that we may be able to bring for families, because we were looking for it, and we knew that there had to be other families in our community or surrounding communities that were probably looking for the same thing. So
had you done anything like this in the past, though, to meet that type of a need?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I knew nothing about the family entertainment industry and what that would entail. But I was fortunate enough to have connections at Economic State Development through my career, more on the international side at that stage. But I reached out to my connections, and they put me in touch with a gentleman named Ron, who no longer works there, but he was on the state level, and kind of just started brainstorming with him, and started doing market research and started doing financial planning and budgeting and seeing if there really was an opportunity for such a business here in Wilkes. And that was a fantastic resource. And through that process of probably 3 to 5 months, somewhere in there, we discovered that there not only was an opportunity to serve Wilkes, but Wilkes being unique and touching 8 counties,
Right.
That there was also an opportunity to maybe service those communities as well as in those counties, because there was a lack of that kind of entertainment.
So your approach from the beginning was looking at Wilkes as being the epicenter, if you will, that would attract and bring other people? Is that what you're saying?
I think it morphed into that.
Right.
I think we looked at Wilkes, and then I kept hearing these stories about how Wilkes touches 8 counties and we're the center of this community and all these kinds of things. So we did start expanding our reach and started doing research on how far people would typically drive in the industry. And we're fortunate to be looking at an industry that does have a lot of documentation from an industry standpoint to support this.
Right.
So we could look at industry data and see what other markets were doing and saying, and
how
things
far
like
people
that.
would come and what they would do.
Exactly.
Right.
So we used a lot of that to kind of estimate where we may be drawing a clientele from. And at that stage too, we just started looking out of the industry of equipment. Not knowing anything, and I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with a gentleman in Lexington, Kentucky. Rugby player, so was I. We kind of hit it off as friends. And he ended up being a great mentor and still is to this day in terms of finding equipment, what would work, what wouldn't, what he's seeing trends in the industry, things like that. So eventually it came down to Jeff, the gentleman's name is, called me one day and said, hey, we just disassembled a trampoline park in New Hampshire. It's a great deal. I think it'll work for you. Do you want it? Hey, that was
had you even looked at where you might put this thing?
So fortunately, with the help of Leanne Nixon and her team over at EDC, she had introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Scott Nafe.
Okay.
And Scott's been in the community here about 15 years, and he actually owned the Melody Square building that we're in now. And I guess previous discussions, Scott had identified this opportunity as well, but he was more in the real estate side. He didn't want to get into operating what would be considered an FEC, a family entertainment center. And through a couple of calls that I'd made at Meredith at the town and getting hooked up with Leanne, she actually put me in touch with Scott. And we actually met down at the building and took a look around and thought this would be a perfect facility. It's 2.5 acres downtown. It's got ample parking. It's got high ceilings for trampolines. So I guess through luck, let's say, no skill of my own, these kind of pieces started coming together. And Scott was very, very gracious in knowing that he wanted to support this for the community as well. So he was willing to sell us the building and owner finance it so we could get started. And then so we took our additional resources that we did have to put into the purchase of the equipment to get started.
And then that's how it started.
And a couple of weeks later, 2 semi-trucks showed up at the building full of metal in pieces with a schematic of A goes to A and B goes to B. It was the help of some friends. It took us about 9 hours to unload those trucks. And
but you didn't have it assembled then. I mean,
it was no.
It sounds like the biggest purchase you could possibly get from IKEA.
You're exactly right. That's exactly
all
what it
those
was.
little bolts and little tools, right? Well, let me ask you this. The building itself, did you have to do a lot of work on the building because basically the place that you have now, it seems like it's all encompassing. So everything had to go inside, right?
Pretty much. So if anyone knew what Melody Square looked like beforehand, it was kind of a mini mall, right, with some little offices and spaces kind of that had been built with walls and things. So we kind of took a strategic approach and thought, okay, we can leave these walls, we'll take out these walls, and kind of made an educated decision decision on what could fit where and what walls would need to leave. And then we spent quite a significant amount of time, and probably 12 dumpsters later, of removing the acoustic ceiling in there to give us the height in the building that we needed. But it was almost perfect because it had the ceiling height, it had the space, it had walls that we could leave to give it the ambiance that we wanted, but take out others to give us the space in the facility to address the needs of the equipment that we got.
So while there was a bit of rehab, not a lot, it sounds like.
Not particularly, no. A lot of it was demolishing, not much construction per se in terms of getting started. So we on the right side of the building, we disassembled, I think it was 2 or 3 walls, and we decided that would be the trampoline room. And we kind of started putting the IKEA set together.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so the trucks show up, right? So what was that transition period like from seeing the trucks? Was there that moment of, oh my gosh?
Yes. It was incredibly more heavier and industrial than we'd ever imagine, as you could, but which is a good thing. But again, not having any experience, we didn't know what we were getting into. So, but Jeff and his team had done a fantastic job disassembling it and labeling everything.
Okay.
So it was really a matter of putting the pieces back together.
But he didn't come down and put it together.
He did not.
No.
So with some early employees that I had, I would spend my days doing my corporate job and my nights till 11, 12 o'clock at night doing trampoline construction.
Wow.
To get this going.
How long did it take?
I think that was a 4-month process.
So 4 months?
Yep.
So that's not really long in the scope of working nighttime with another gig and with a few guys you know.
Yep, exactly.
Your buddies. How much pizza did you buy?
We bought a lot of pizza, a lot of Chinese. Yes, we went through some food, but at the end of the day, my wife and I saw a vision, and we knew what a great way to get involved in our new home. In our new community. So we did that diligently, and we only opened with probably less than half the building to get started. We opened with the trampolines, and we had a bounce house, a toddler room, and I think 1 or 2 birthday rooms open. And that's what we started.
That's what you started with.
That's what we started with.
With plenty of room for growth.
Plenty of room for growth.
Okay, so when did you know it's the day to open, right? And at what point in time were you and your wife standing there comforting each other, okay, this is fine?
I think we're still doing that. Being small business owners.
Right, of course.
But, it was really that turning point on that opening day when we almost had a line out the door. And you see the joy of the kids coming in. And, we live in a community where even an hour's travel for some families can be difficult, right? So there's kids that have never been exposed to anything like this. So you see them come in and they see the trampoline room and their eyes are just wide open. And you still see that feeling today when some kids come in and they see the arcade and the flashing lights and the big games and everything. And what's exciting to me is, are we getting the chance to allow these kids to experience something that they may never have got the experience to do? And what is that going to do for their future to say, wow, I guess what else is out there in the world?
Sure.
Maybe I need to go explore or go look at something.
There's this school of thought that I think has a lot of value to it, and it talks about the experiences we have when we're younger. If you just have very limited experiences and you're not exposed to challenges, then your development path may be slightly different or extremely different than for some of your peers who have extreme experiences, who do go and bounce and fall and keep bouncing. They do climb a wall, then they do overcome fears. do you find that what you're providing now, yes, it's a place to play, a place to celebrate, but it does challenge the body and the mind. And is that a good thing?
It does. It absolutely is. Right. Yeah, not only is there the physical exercise aspect of this and allow our kids to get out, especially in the winter months, you know, have a place to go and burn energy and be with friends and things like that. But again, touching back on what I said before about opening their eyes to different experiences that they then may go back and question, well, what else is out there in the world, you know? What can I go and experience or do? I never knew about a trampoline park, or I never knew about an arcade. What else don't I know about? And maybe that'll motivate, maybe not all, but some, to go and ask those questions and then maybe start exploring those opportunities outside of the county, or maybe even inside the county. You never know.
Sure. Well, it worked for you, right? I mean, you went from experiencing your country, and as you traveled, because that was part of the culture, part of growing up was to go and explore the rest of the world. And when a lot of kids hear, that would not be the normal to have that, because there is no alienation here. Things are here, but still, yet that traveling, experiencing, that's important. So you're giving people here in this community and the surrounding communities. Have you seen that yet? Are you able to say, okay, we not only have people in Wilkes County, but this area that I heard about, it's actually there and they're coming?
Yes.
Talk about
that. And I think we have, and I think probably the most relevant way I can say that is that we're drawing in. I don't hear so much about Wilkes people going out and exploring, but drawing people into Wilkes County, let's say. So, and the most relevant one of those is we have a regular family that comes from Galax, Virginia. And there's nothing for their family to do up in that region, and they have chosen to come to the block on a regular basis for their family and come and experience Wilkes. And through discussions with them, they would say, oh, we never knew Wilkes had this or that or whatever. So I would say, from my experience and what I'm hearing, it's not necessarily what I'd hoped about the kids going out. I'm sure that's happening, but just because of the side of the business that I'm on, I get to hear about people saying, well, we never knew Wilkes had this, or we never knew Wilkes had that, and maybe opening up those opportunities, because we draw customers from Watauga and Ash and Allegheny and Surrey and all these places.
So they come to the block and they have that experience, but then they're also having other experiences in the area.
Correct.
Hence, you built a restaurant that has a very Australia-sounding name, right?
That's right.
Did you grow up with wombats?
We did not. They're quite rare to find, actually. They're not knocking on your front door.
Yeah, I did a little research. I said, I got to ask that question. Where did that name come from?
Again, that was one of those things where my wife and I were exploring, kind of bouncing ideas off each other one night, and we wanted something with an Australian theme, but we didn't want to be that quintessential beat you over the head with the Australian theme, you know what I mean? So we're kind of bouncing around ideas, and, Down Under was way too over the top.
You do know that some people are watching now and saying, no, what does he mean?
We didn't want to call it Mick Dundee's, you know what I mean? Or the Foster's Bar or something that was that quintessential thing when maybe my generation or older Americans think of Australia, right? We have those cultural kind of
just so you know, we wouldn't have had a problem with that.
Right.
But I really appreciate hearing the story because that's pretty darn good. I mean, if we look at the place that you have your restaurant now, which I don't know if that just went over everybody's head, because this is separate from the block. This is not part of the block. It's yet another business that since you have nothing to do in your life, you said, well, let's do another business.
Exactly. I don't know why, and I know 100% all of these things are self-inflicted. Again, we being in the community and seeing opportunities or bringing experiences here that maybe quote unquote big city folks get.
Sure.
There's no reason that we can't experience those here in Wilkes County. So, again, it was through no active decision of ours, but we saw the property there on Main Street. We got to know Danny and Stephanie Branchaforte, who owned the property and had the restaurant for, I think, 17 or 18 years. And through COVID, again, they were taking that as an opportunity for a change and looking to do something different in their life. So we chatted with them and kind of brainstormed for a while. And again, my wife and I had never run a restaurant, didn't really know what we were getting into, but the property itself lended it to the concept of what we loved with the outdoor space.
Oh, sure. Well, everyone saw that happening because okay, here's a new restaurant coming. Okay. And then the next thing everybody knows, the parking lot's got carpet on it. They're little houses to climb on. There's all sorts of things going on. So was that because of your block experience, or was that because of what you brought from, your culture and that Australian idea of making this big experience? And
I think it was a little bit of both. Obviously, we were very family-centric and having a place for the families to be. But running a brewery, and the way we ran the brewery down there was a very family-friendly environment. We'd be working, our boys were riding their bikes and tricycles around, and pubs and restaurants in Australia are very much a family-orientated place.
Okay.
Kind of like Europe, you go to Europe and the whole family's there and things like that. So we wanted a space where families could come and enjoy the outdoors. There were a couple of restaurants in town with outdoor seating, but not to the scope that you would see in larger cities. The metropolitan areas in, say, Noda or downtown Charlotte, where would have the open spaces and the place for the kids to play. Well, maybe so the parents got together and enjoyed a cold beer in the sun and just had a great place for everyone to enjoy. And fortunately, that property lended itself to that idea. So
Did you see it? As you saw the property, were you standing there with your eyes closed and said, okay, I can see this? Or was this something that took more work? Because it seems very deliberate now that I hear your story and understand your background a bit. It's so big from an experience standpoint. It just seems real big.
It was deliberate in terms of the vision I saw for those, converting those parking lots into those spaces.
Some people would say, wait a minute, we need more parking. You said, no, we need more what?
More outdoor space, more space for everyone to come and enjoy.
Right.
And through probably lack of my foresight, I really don't think ahead too far and say, well, maybe it's too big, or what am I going to do? I'm like, it would be great to have this as an AstroTurf space and build a playground for the kids. And typically that's where I stop, and then I just start doing.
Right. But you didn't stop on this one.
I didn't. So we got that. So again, we're fortunate enough to do some research, and the turf that's out there is actually the old UNCC Charlotte 49ers football field.
Oh, wow.
That they were replacing.
Right.
So we got.
So you actually got the turf material.
The turf materials from their football field.
Oh, nice.
Hence the random lines in there. I'd love to have a better story. People will say, "What game is this?"
Right.
And I feel like making something up, but at the end of the day, it was what we delivered from Charlotte.
It was that Wilkes Charlotte game,
That's right, exactly.
That Wilkes won that year. I didn't hear about that. Oh well, it was quiet.
Exactly.
Right.
But again, it was more about the property and lending itself to bringing an experience to Wilkes County.
All right. What have people said to you now? I mean, so it's there. What type of feedback have you had people come up to you and your wife and say, let me tell you?
Again, they thank us maybe not so much more for the space, and families do thank us for that, and letting the kids have a place to play, and we've fenced it all then from Main Street, so everybody's safe and everyone can play and enjoy the time. But I think the thing we get thanked for the most is investing in the town, investing in Main Street, being here, seeing the vision and executing and doing things for the town. And I'd have to say that's probably the most rewarding thing as well, is how often do you open a business and people thank you for being here? They may enjoy the space, but going out of their way to thank you. And that just makes us feel even more part of the community, you know, and we were very, very fortunate to get that feedback at the block, and the same feedback at the restaurant as well, as thank you for doing this. Thank you for adding to the life of downtown or Main Street and things like that. And we're not the only ones doing it.
Sure.
But we're just glad to be a part of it.
Right. And you're the one doing something that's very visible and taking the biggest empty space and doing something, and then taking this iconic restaurant and doing this thing with it. So you and your wife are like really busy. You got all these things going on, and yet another thing happens, and you're like, well, we're kind of a theatrical family. We like to put on a show, watch a show, be part of a show around the world. Why don't we do something else, sweetheart? And then tell everybody what you did.
So again, this was absolutely nothing we had planned, and it coincided at the exact time as us doing the restaurant, so we must be crazy. But Daniel, the gentleman that owned the Liberty Theater, was not in great health and knew that he had to step away because he couldn't run the theater like he had hoped. And so he had approached myself and Ainsley about the possibility of taking over that theater. And again, had no industry experience, didn't know what to do. But what we didn't know is Daniel had also reached out to Mark and Lani Cook from Cook Sporting Goods to see if they may be interested. And Mark and I happened to be friends, and through a conversation one day, say, hey, guess what? I got an email from Daniel, and he said, yeah, I think I got the same email. So we started having a conversation of, well, is this something we could do together? So we looked at the opportunity, had several conversations with Daniel to kind of learn his experience. He had run movie theaters for many years. But I think what it came down to in the end was, if someone didn't take the opportunity to keep the 92-year institution of the Liberty Theater alive in town, there was a chance it was going to close, and even better chance that it would go away. It was once it closed, it was probably gone forever. And we kind of made the decision more, not from a financial standpoint, because trust me, we're $5 movies. We're not retiring to the Bahamas anytime soon. But can we have the opportunity to keep something alive in town that's been here forever? And just like my wife says at the block, we're creating these memories for the kids, and she's excited that maybe in 20 years' time we're going to have a family return with kids, and one of those parents is going to come to us and say, hey, I remember having my 5th birthday at the block, and creating those stories and those experiences and those memories. We know those stories and experiences and memories already exist in Wilkes County with the Liberty Theater. And we've chatted with people who say, I remember coming here as a child and paying a dime or a quarter or whatever it was to see a movie. Can we keep that institution alive so the kids coming now to see whatever movies that we're showing this year, are they going to come back and tell those same stories in 20 or 30 years' time? And that's a great thing.
So your wife is stacking up future feel-goods, right, with the block. You guys have got an eating place now that people are liking, and it's a unique experience. Now you've partnered with a friend to save an institution in the community. And yes, there'll be those future, with that one, there will be those future feel-goods that stack up. But I'm guessing that you're getting payoff on that from the very beginning, because just keeping it alive, doing improvements. Do you have people now who are coming and say, I remember when I was a kid and I came here? You're getting that payoff a little quicker, right?
Immediately. And then an example of something that we're doing or that we brought back was several years ago before COVID, they were doing free movies in the summer for the community. And we brought that back last year for the first time, and this year was our second time. So every Tuesday through Thursday at 10:30, we do a free movie for the community at the Liberty Theatre that they can come in and see. And we know for some families, even a $5 ticket for 3 or 4 family members is a lot.
Sure.
So is this a great chance for families to come downtown in the summer? Maybe it's with grandma, grandpa, or what have you. The kids are out of school. Come in, get out of the heat, see a movie, enjoy some time away, be around other families, and just get out of the house and have some good quality family time. So we reinstituted that. And I tell you, it's such a joy to see. Sometimes I'm in the restaurant doing some things, and about 10 o'clock I start seeing the families come down, and the kids are in their pajamas, and they've got blankets, and they're ready to go to the movie. And through that, the streets are full, and there's people out and about in Main Street, and there's this life to the town. And we're just so privileged to be part of that and bringing people down. And then, to your point, the feedback of little kids writing us thank you note. Thank you for showing movies during the summer. I really enjoyed this. We're banking that for the future, absolutely. And oftentimes their parents or grandparents even, because the theater's been around for a long time.
They've got their memories.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're telling us, I remember coming here to see this movie when I was their age or what have you. So not only are we getting that immediate feedback, but we are banking, in your words, those memories for later on. And my wife ran the numbers last week. We had over 4,700 tickets sold over the summer for those free movies.
Oh, that's great.
And people coming down. So again, it's about letting people experience things they may not have the opportunity to do normally, or building those memories for future chances that who knows, maybe the Liberty will be around in another 50 years and we'll be still hearing those stories.
So when you look at these experiences that you've had, obviously you bought a home here just to come up on the weekends. That's when it all started. Then something started stirring in you, and you're like, well, maybe we want to explore living there. You did that. And now you're building these activities. And all of this has happened fairly quickly, right?
Right.
So is it safe to say that the area itself has a draw to it? The people, the kindness, the generosity, the gratitude, that there is a draw and a power to that. And have you gone from liking to loving and imagining, wow, we're really doing something good here? And since you're having that experience, you just know that it's going to attract other people to have that experience as well.
I would think so. And to be honest with you, I think it was a timing thing. As a younger man, I think moving to a community like this was just not on my radar. Sure. I loved Tokyo and Hong Kong and London and the vibe. But as you get older, you're obviously mature and appreciate different things. But at the same time, I think during this journey of doing business in a small community, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a business standpoint, doing business in a community like this has been significantly easier than doing it in a larger community.
Right.
For the one factor we've already talked about is the support that we got from the community. It's been fabulous, right? Thank you for opening the block. Thank you for investing in the theater. Those things, those personal connections that you made are invaluable. They're fantastic. And then the process of actually doing business, the support we get from Town Hall here in North Wilkesboro, the support we get from the commissioners and everybody on the county level at the offices has just been amazing, because you get to create a personal connection with those people. You're not just another face,
Right.
another someone in a big town trying to get a permit or whatever. You are a person. You are Mick. You are somebody. So to be able to do that, it makes the flow of business and things happen, I think, quicker. I don't have the experience in big towns, but I can only assume it makes it happen quicker. And the support you get from those institutions makes things a lot easier. Right. So I would say, at least from my experience, the opportunity to be an entrepreneur and do these kinds of things in a community like this has been phenomenal. It's been really great. And I'm hoping that there may be some other people outside of here looking at making a lifestyle change or what have you. And all I can say is, from a business standpoint and a lifestyle standpoint, come into a community like this, life just gets easier and it gets enjoyable.
It's nice, right?
It's fun.
It's nice.
Really
Mick, thanks for your time. We'll get together soon. We'll have to chat with your wife about all of her magical powers in the world of media work to help bring the message to life on the things that we seem to enjoy a lot now.
Absolutely.
And we use all the time, right?
Absolutely.
But spreading that message is important.
Yeah.
So I got to think that I just really believe that this is a good message to share.
I hope so. And I hope, again, we can inspire some people to maybe take that chance or ask the questions or what have you. And, at the end of the day, Wilkes County, being unique it is in terms of its location, we're really not far from Charlotte Airport and what have you.
Sure.
We've got gig fiber connectivity here for remote workers and things like that. And they're just being part of something where you feel like you're making a difference and a change is huge.
That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
It is.
Mick. See you next time.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for spending time with us on Life in Wilkes. We value you as a viewer and appreciate when you share the show with your friends and family. Be sure to bookmark our channel and join us again on the next episode of Life in Wilkes.